This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to CNN Business. Ever wondered where your favorite Nike shirt or shoe came from? But today, we're inquiring to sweatshops a question of their ethicality. As defined by Britannica, a sweatshop is a workplace in which workers are employed at low wages and under unhealthy or oppressive conditions. They are most commonly located in developing countries such as Bangladesh, where working laws are less regulated. According to Earned Wage, in 2010 alone, there were more than 4,800 factories and 3.5 million people employed in the Bangladesh garment industry, producing cheap clothes under appalling work conditions for major international brands. However, sweatshops are also huge factors in helping people out of poverty and economic growth in developing countries. On one hand, it's a question of ethics, and on the other, they're highly beneficial for developing economies and globalization. Today, we have two experts to explain both sides of the argument. Miss Yu, a social activist who lived in Bangladesh. She lost a friend in the infamous Rana Plaza incident. Conversely, we have businessman Cui, the CEO of a fast fashion company. Let's welcome them both to state and explain their views.
My name is Tristane, and I used to live in Bangladesh. I lived there for a number of years, and while I was there, I had a friend who was actually a garment worker in Rana Plaza, but unfortunately passed away in the accident that occurred.
Tristane, one of the biggest CEOs of a sweatshop business.
The working conditions in sweatshops are hazardous and violate the workers' human rights. The workspaces that these people have to work in are very cramped and have to be shared with hundreds of other people. Not only are these workspaces very crowded, the air quality is very poor, and they have to put up with extreme heat. These conditions can lead to injuries, equipment malfunction, and even factory fires, making it very dangerous to work there. Sweatshop workers also work extremely long hours and have little time in between shifts. Many people are forced to work 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, with some people ending their shifts at 3 a.m., only to go to work again that same morning at 7:30 a.m., according to Warren Watt. There is a lot of oppression and inequality that goes on in sweatshops, and often factory owners have a lot more power and jurisdiction over their workers, and they don't provide them with equal treatment or the right to speak their mind. Factory owners often take measures to prevent labor unions from forming, despite these labor unions being legal. And this suppresses the workers and basically allows the factory owners to take advantage of their poor financial status or their living conditions. 85% of clothing production workers are women, and these women face sexual harassment and sexual assault when they are working in these conditions. In Bangladesh, the Human Rights Watch has documented sexualized threats against women organizers by factory managers and supervisors. Women also get improper maternity leave. Even though it's illegal, most women get demoted when they return from maternity leave. And 50% of women don't get the government guaranteed minimum of 100 days of maternity leave for the first two children when they work in sweatshops. The amount of money that workers make in sweatshops, when taken into account all the challenges that they have to go through just to do their jobs, is very, very little. Sweatshop workers are paid as little as 3 cents per hour, even when they work up to 100 plus hours a week, according to the World Count. These sweatshop workers are also typically paid the minimum wage for whatever country they're working in. Since 2017 in Bangladesh, the average worker's daily wage is about $3 USD per day, which is just barely enough for them to support themselves and any family they may have.
Sweatshops can greatly benefit developing nations such as Bangladesh as they provide great physical, technological, and human skills towards the country. One example could be that older women who grew up in the years of independence in the 1970s had to work in unpaid labor trying to survive in the grinding poverty. Whereas a teen working 6 days a week in 2019 can make about 8,400 taka a month, which is roughly about 80 pounds. There are so many social benefits for the Bangladeshi people, such as the millions of women who make around 80% of the textile workforce. The industry represents a possibility to earn money as they can attain at least some economic freedom in their society where women are typically housewives and their other options are usually to get married. Since 2017, workers are usually paid the minimum wage for the country they work in. And in Bangladesh, the average worker's wages is 3 USD a day. When you compare this to the amount of money they're making without the sweatshops, $3 a day seems better off feeding your family than almost nothing. As you can see, the average Bangladeshi life expectancy has increased by almost 20 years since 1990. In 1990, the life expectancy was merely 55 to 60 years old, whereas in 2017, the life expectancy is at a solid 73. This can be partially credited for the sweatshops taking place in Bangladesh, where they have implemented lots of social services that greatly benefits the social life of the Bangladeshi citizens.
Sweatshops take advantage of anyone who needs money desperately to support themselves and just to live a normal life. So this includes women, men, and even children. They utilize child labor to their benefit. In India, between 5% to 30% of 340 million children under the age of 16 are estimated to fall under the definition of child labor, according to Brendan Gale. It is also estimated that 1.3 million children in Bangladesh are working full-time in order to help support their families. The number of children in Bangladesh who have never enrolled in school is 1.5 million. Furthermore, according to Brendan Gale, an estimated 250 million children from ages 5 to 14 are forced to work in sweatshops in developing countries. In Bangladesh alone, it is estimated that 1.3 million children are working full-time in order to help support their families. And now the number of children in Bangladesh who have never even enrolled in school stands at a whopping 1.5 million. Just showing how large of an issue sweatshops taking advantage of child labor is. Often these children are poor and see working as the only way out of poverty, even if they want to go to school and get a higher education. As I mentioned previously, sweatshop working conditions are extremely hazardous. Since 1990, more than 400 workers have died and several thousand more have been wounded in 50 major factory fires, according to War and Law. The most prominent and deadly sweatshop incident was the Rana Plaza accident on April 24, 2013. The Rana Plaza building consisted of 5 garment factories. The day before the incident, large structural cracks were discovered in the building. Many shops and the bank on the first floor closed, and people were advised to avoid the building. The sweatshops on the upper floors and the building owner, however, insisted that everything was fine and ordered workers to come into work the next day. Otherwise, they would be fired. Many workers came into work the next day in fear of losing their jobs, even though they didn't want to be there, and hours later, the building collapsed. This tragedy killed at least 1,132 people and injured more than 2,500, according to the International Labour Organization. Events like these can cause great trauma and psychological damage to those involved. One example would be a 15-year-old garment worker, Harudi, who was on the sixth floor during the Rana Plaza collapse. She lost her leg and her mother in the accident and developed PTSD. However, she was forced to continue working in the industry because she had no other way to support her family despite the mental scars. This isn't the first time an accident like this has happened either. 5 months prior to the Rana Plaza accident, there was a factory fire in the Tazreen Fashions factory, which is on the outskirts of Dhaka. At least 112 workers were trapped inside the building and lost their lives that day. Thus, it's a huge human rights violation to send people, especially young children, into the unsafe and accident-prone working conditions of sweatshops.
Monsieur, since you brought up the Rana Plaza disaster, I'm gladly here to inform you that since then, there has been many changes to the sweatshop industry in regards to the safety and the essential human rights. Since then, organizations such as the Industrial Global Union and Clean Clothes Campaign are taking steps to increase the checkups on the sweatshops to make sure that these things don't happen again. Sweatshops, on the other hand, account for about 84% of Bangladeshi's export revenue. And according to the World Bank, the Bangladesh economy is 15 times bigger than it was in 1980. Due to the versatility of the Bangladeshi workers and their low wages, Bangladesh has greatly built off of these sweatshop industries and made their own civilizations more advanced. They have also increased their GDP by great amounts due to these sweatshops. Another benefit would be that the number of people living below the poverty line has fallen from more than 44% in 1991 to less than 13%. Lastly, according to the World Bank, family sizes have fallen dramatically in Bangladesh, from more than 6 children per woman in 1980 to barely 2 today. This means that there's less need for labor work as the economy is gradually improving. And when this comes back to the consumers in America, Canada, and these Western countries, more people who live in poverty in these types of countries have the ability to afford these cheap clothes while still maintaining a decent safety working conditions in Bangladesh. So people in America can buy affordable clothes for the minimum price, where we can control the supply chain and get them these clothes. Hi Arab. What do you
Hello.
think about Bangladeshi workers being forced into labor for a very low wage in order to support their families in Bangladesh?
I think forced labor isn't okay at all, and nobody should be forced to do something they don't want. And there are things being done to stop forced labor in Bangladesh, such as the Bangladesh Accord, which has just been renewed by all the big companies in the world to help the minimum pay be higher. But from what I know, from my own personal experience in Bangladesh, most of the workers aren't actually forced to work. They just have no better choice to work in anywhere else, because most poor people in Bangladesh, they have probably live on a farm, and it's agriculture, which is what they're in, and that's where they get most of their food. And the rest of the money they need is for things like sending their kids to school or paying for water or something like that. And like they these like people have nothing better like no other better job to go to, because the other jobs that they have are things like prostitution and nefarious like gang lords and things like that that aren't safe at all. Like that aren't safe compared to the conditions in the sweatshops. And like sweatshops are a very very easy way to get out of extreme poverty, and it's allowed a lot of like Bengali poor people in Bangladesh to get out of poverty, send their kids to school. So I think that like
you need to have laws so that it's fair and that people aren't taken advantage of, but I do believe that it's a good thing that sweatshops are there because it does help a lot of people.
Now that we've covered both the positives and negatives of sweatshops, what part do you, the consumer, play in all this? Well, sweatshops and fast fashion are a direct result of high consumer demand and the business model of lowest cost, highest profit. Companies mass produce clothing with the lowest cost possible in utilizing sweatshops to create cheap t-shirts you see in stores globally. Well, what can you do? Are you willing to pay more in order to guarantee the safety of the workers? Paying extra money to a reliable clothing store will ensure that the company won't cut wages and provide a safer environment for the workers. According to the website The World Counts, it would only cost 1.8% more on average for the consumer to double wages in sweatshops. You could also support companies that have proven to ensure the essential human rights of these workers, despite being a little more expensive. I'm sure it would greatly improve your state of mind to know that companies are being ethical while still providing for the Bangladesh economy. After analyzing all the perspectives, we have come to the conclusion that sweatshops are indeed good. As this situation is not black and white, there are many variables that come into play when discussing this major problem. But overall, looking at the research we've gathered and opinions from our various guests, the conclusion can be made that the benefits in which the sweatshops bring outweigh the limitations. In recent times, the COVID-19 situation brought a whole new outlook for the sweatshops in Bangladesh. How will companies react to these sorts of challenges brought upon them, and how will they adapt?